Of course, you can always be old-fashioned and stick with the actual physical papers, and we're going to take a look through them now. Diptyque Laurent is with me in studio. She's been scouring the French papers in particular for this hour. And Diptyque, one story taking the front page, at least, of Libération, it's former French President Nicolas Sarkozy being brought in for questioning.
That's right. He's on the front page of Libération, as you see here. He's in police custody as we speak. The return of scandals, that's what Libé says on its front page, for the former president, who, let's be honest, has pretty much been plagued by scandals ever since he left the Elysee. This time, and for the first time in this case, he's in police custody for alleged illegal campaign financing coming from the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Libé's gone with a very solemn picture of Sarkozy dating back to 2007, his first year in office. More than anything, the paper's editors say it's sad to see a former president in police custody. It's also the return of the living dead, if you want, at least according to this cartoon from Libération's Willem. A skeleton of Gaddafi has risen from the dead, coming back and haunting Sarkozy. Not just Sarkozy, but his former ministers Brice Hortefeux and Claude Guéant, as well as Ziad Takieddine, a French businessman, all of whom are also implicated in the scandal.
And now Sarkozy, of course, these allegations are nothing new. They've been swirling since about 2013. He's always denied them, but what kind of reactions are we seeing from the fact that he's been brought into police custody for questioning?
Well, we are seeing a lot of reactions from both sides of the political spectrum in France. Le Figaro is opting in this article for a picture of Sarkozy controversially welcoming Gaddafi at the Elysee Palace in December 2007. Now, here in France, Prime Minister Edouard Philippe has refused to comment, but he did express his mutual respect for Sarkozy, while those from Sarkozy's conservative Les Républicains party, well, they've declared their full support for him, with the party's leader, Laurent Wauquiez, calling the questioning, quote, useless and humiliating. Now, what's interesting is Le Figaro's editors explain that, in particular for Laurent Wauquiez and others who aspire to take the leadership of the French right, Sarkozy is still a beacon. He's a reference for leadership. I quote, respected, sometimes even feared as a leader, irrespective of their political affiliations. I quote, they all have something of Sarkozy in them. This explains why they continue to stand by him despite his numerous scandals.
OK, but it's not, of course, all about Sarkozy in the French papers. Le Croix, for example, is looking at something also very serious. It's about the idea of France providing weapons and military tanks to Saudi Arabia that are potentially being used in the war against Yemen.
And this, which I'll explain in a minute, is actually could be violating France's international humanitarian obligations. The French weapons that are killing people in Yemen, that's what the Catholic paper La Croix says on its front page. A pretty explosive headline, if at least in French, when you see that with a picture of French Leclerc tanks being used by the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. Now, this report was ordered by Amnesty International France and a group called the Christian Action Group for the Abolition of Torture, also known as ACAT. According to them, France's provision of weapons and tanks to Saudi Arabia and the UAE risks violating their international humanitarian obligations because they consider that what's happening in Yemen at the hands of the Saudis are war crimes. And this means you cannot provide weapons to countries at risk of committing war crimes. A representative from ACAT explains to La Croix that the international treaty on the sale of weapons, of which France is part of, it's not about proving whether war crimes are being committed. In fact, if there's just a risk of war crimes being committed with the weapons you're providing them, well, then you are considered I guess, illegal or violating your international humanitarian
Those sales have to stop. And quickly, Diptyque, we're looking there. The front page of Le Figaro, meanwhile, is accusing France, and indeed, to a wider extent, the West in general, of abandoning the Kurds in Syria.
This is a very explosive editorial as well from Le Figaro. They say what's happened to the Kurds and happening to the Kurds is cowardly, morally and politically wrong. The Kurds, who were one day the West's dear allies fighting against the Islamic State group, are basically left out to dry by the West now as they face this offensive by the Turks in Afrin, and now also Turkey is looking to widen that to the northeast of Syria.
Indeed, that war now in its 8th year, really only getting worse by the days. Diptyque Laurent, thanks a lot for that wrap-up of the French papers. Time now for us to take a very quick break, but we're back with all the latest updates in a few minutes, so do stay with us.